Hello, I'm Herlda Senhouse, and I'm 107 years old. Now, you young people, get up and get to that voting place as soon as you can get there. How about that one?
Today we're hanging out with Herlda Senhouse, who is one of my homegirls, and she's 107 years old. And because I have the privilege of getting to hang out with her, I thought we would share Auntie with the world because she has something very important to tell everyone since voting season is here. So, Auntie, we want to talk about voting today because we have our conversations around voting. And you voted, who was the first president you voted for?
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
D. Roosevelt. And that was in 1936. And you were in your 20s.
Right.
And I was doing some research in preparation for our talk, some historical facts research. So, of course, the 19th Amendment passed, giving most women the right to vote.
Right.
But still, with the past, and that was in the 1920, it was ratified in August 18th, 1920. And we can argue that it didn't give all women the right to vote because if you were poor, if you were black, if you were Asian or Native American or anyone besides wealthy white women,
Right.
you really didn't have the opportunity. So if that was in 1920 and then just 16 years later, you got the chance to vote.
Right.
And do you remember the first time anyone talked to you about voting?
No, I don't remember anybody talking to me about voting. I just decided on my own
You decided your own?
that it was necessary for me to get out there to vote.
Okay. And do you remember that moment, that day that you registered the first time?
No, that was so long ago. I can't remember that. But I do remember that we were not able to vote before, and I'm saying to myself, you have the privilege to vote, so just go ahead and go to the polls and vote.
And vote.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And do you remember how it felt to vote for the first time?
I don't remember how it felt. I just know that I went and I said, I think I can make a difference. Yeah.
It's so important to exercise that right.
Right.
Okay, so you already mentioned, because my next question is, were you aware of that privilege since so many other women
Right.
Around the country were still struggling for the right? And even though we learned about this, but I still wanted to be correct, it wasn't until, the 1960s, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that outlawed the discriminatory voting practices in the South. And so many black women were still fighting for that right all those years later. And is that something you were thinking about because you voted the first time in the presidential election in 1936, and you haven't missed an election since?
No, I haven't.
You haven't.
No.
And why?
Because I think it's important.
I think it's important.
Yeah, very important.
Okay.
If everyone felt that way, I think we would have had a much better leader right now.
Okay. And I know right now everyone's talking about how do we get the young people excited? And you mentioned that when you were younger, you weren't very excited about it.
No one, came to me and said, you should go and vote and get me excited about politics. I just decided on my own.
You decided on your own. Okay. And you started talking about, the leadership we're experiencing now. And do you have any comments on the current political atmosphere in the United States?
Yes, I have a lot of too much I can't say it.
I mean, well, right now a lot of us are seeing the need to continuously fight for things that we thought were behind us, right? So you still have political people trying to prevent Black people from voting, and all these new voting laws that they're creating and purging people off the rolls.
Right.
And so, what do you think about that?
I think that is a terrible thing, to not let people have the right to do what they want to do, because everybody's a human being. Everybody has a right to say what they want to say, and I think they should allow them to do so.
To vote and have their voices heard. Right.
Yeah, I think they should be allowed to do the voting like everybody else. Everybody should have that right. And if you have that right, I wish you'd use it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I mean, in my opinion, it feels like a lot of people have kind of like taken it for granted. They assumed that the United States was okay and we're the best, so we don't have to take it seriously, take democracy seriously. And then we see that our democracy is really fragile. Super fragile.
Right now.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as someone, I mean, you're 107. You've lived through so many things in the United States history.
Right.
So, but you often tell me, at least, that this is some of the most challenging and dangerous times that you've lived in. And
it is.
Do you still believe that?
I still believe that.
You still
I've never seen nothing like this.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
This is really unbelievable that we had Republicans that we looked up to because they had class. And now these Republicans, they don't have class, dignity. The Oval Office is just like any other office. It doesn't have any class. Any and everybody goes to the Oval Office now. Years ago, they didn't invite people to the Oval Office. They're crazy.
I think I know who you're talking about. Because you talked to me about him. Okay, so, I mean, so obviously we're in a hard time. And I think one thing that I've learned is that the fight for justice, the fight for voting rights for everyone, and just rights for everyone, human rights.
Right.
It's clearly going to be a continuous process, because
it is.
I thought, there are a lot of signs you see at protests, like, I can't believe I'm still fighting for this, but yet we're still fighting for basic
I think you
rights.
will be fighting for a long, long time.
For a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And since you have lived through so many trying periods in the United States history, what's your recommendation for people who are just trying to, what do you recommend people do who really are feeling maybe even despair around what's going on? What can we do to refocus our energy and make sure that we turn the country into a more positive and just direction?
All I think they have to do is get out there and work hard for the for the politician that's interested in the people, not just for their, let's say, just for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That they should work for the people. That's important. And I'll vote for any Republican, Democrat, or independent that I feel is qualified for the job.
Mm-hmm.
But the party doesn't really matter to me. It's if you're qualified to do the job, I'll vote for you. Because I have switched from Republicans to the Democrats because I felt the ones that were running in the Democratic Party was more qualified than the ones running in the Republican.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was switching back and forth years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got in the Democratic Party and I stayed there because it seemed like they were more sincere and more passionate and more interested in helping the people that didn't have too much, the middle class people who struggled. They were the ones. The Republicans didn't seem to have that compassion because they have shut down the government, which I had never seen before in my lifetime. I'm saying I never heard of government being shut down before. And here the Republicans come here and shut down the government a couple times. Now that's ridiculous. We need our government to be run steady and perfect because the people need the government to run that way. So that's why I'm staying in the Democratic Party, because they seem to understand our problem. The Republicans have money. I don't think they understand the middle class problem. The middle class and the poor, because they have money. They don't think about the ones that don't have money. So, but I do think the Democratic Party, they're thinking in that line, because most of them are not that wealthy as the Republicans. You know?
Yeah. So, wow. So, so you want people this election, tomorrow's the last day in our state to register to vote, and a lot of people will soon be voting. We have midterms coming up.
Right.
So what is your message to the voters?
Just get out and vote. Try to decide which candidate you think will do the best job, and go and vote. That's important. In the primaries, very important. Most people think primaries is not important, but it is. If you don't vote in the primaries, then you don't need to go to the big one.
you're like, don't you have the job? Do all the jobs. So you're like, vote in your local election, vote in the national elections.
Right.
You want them to be involved in all of those. Get involved, right?
Get involved.
Because I don't know, for me, I have been thinking, you think about the world you want to see. The world I want to see, the United States I want to see, and the world is an inclusive world. And where we all can vote without being challenged, where they're not people who are so fearful of losing power that they will pillage and burn down a whole country.
Right.
That's unreal and crazy to me. So I just wanted, because you're 107, maybe they may not listen to me, but I figure, hopefully, people will listen to someone who's been here so much longer than most of us.
I've been here a long time, and I've seen a lot. And I've never seen things happening as they're happening now. And it's strange. I thought the United States was looked up to, Everybody thought the United States was the best. And I think, in my opinion, I live here. It is the best.
You're like, I'm going to represent for my country.
It's my country, and I do think it's the best. And it could be better. And it has been better. But now, it's going downhill, and we shouldn't let it go downhill. We should fight to keep it where it was, the top country. And I don't know what these people are thinking. I don't think they're thinking.
Well, they're definitely not thinking about the people.
No.
Obviously.
No.
Anyone's people.
No.
They're not thinking about the kids that they are snatching from their families.
How could you separate families? That never happened in my lifetime. I've never seen that. I mean, families have to be the family. It isn't a family if you're going to separate them, right?
Right. Okay. So what we're hearing is there's so many issues to consider in this next election. Yeah. And the point is that if we want to you're saying if you have love for the country,
Right.
and if you really are committed to democracy,
If you
We need
love
to-
your country, you will get out there and vote and try to keep our country on top.
and I think I'll also add, if you don't see anyone you want to vote for, maybe you should try to run yourself. If you don't see anyone doing something that you think should be done, you should try doing it. That's what I tell people. If you don't like what's being done, try doing it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Auntie, aka Herlda Senhouse. Do you have any last words about this topic?
No, I think you're doing a good job trying to help the voting coming up. And I hope it all works, and I hope people will listen and get out there and do the right thing.
Thank you so much, Auntie. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us.